Welcome to In a World with Real Media. I'm your host, Brad Burrow. In this podcast, we'll dive into the lives of the most successful people in business. We'll learn how they overcame adversity, took advantage of opportunities, and learned from their experiences. Learn from our experts, get inspired, then go live your story. It's In a World with Real Media. Hello and welcome to the In a World with Real Media podcast. I'm Brad Burrow, and today we have a very special guest, Merrill Eisenhower, and he is the great-grandson of Ike.
That's correct. My
Ike, and if you know who Ike is, you may have to Google that, right?
Some people may, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
But just for the record, I met Merrill getting to work with you on a project for it. Now I want to get this, the March of the Living.
That's correct.
Which I didn't know anything about. With Jack Hashel called me, and well, of course we'd love to help. And then I started doing a little bit of research on the March of the Living, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to go. I've got to go there. You even mentioned me. I don't know if you remember the day that you're in, and we were shooting. You said maybe I should take a video crew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go. And that looked like a really cool thing.
It was definitely surreal, for sure. Whenever
Yeah.
you start thinking about what the March of the Living is. So for those people that don't know, the March of the Living is a remembrance time where they walk from Auschwitz to Birkenau in reverse of the Nazi death camps.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea was that was it called the March of Death or something like that? They would go from where you guys are walking the opposite direction. They would go to their death, basically.
They would do the same type of march without shoes, with very little clothes. 1.3 million people died in 18 months of Auschwitz and Birkenau.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. One of the darkest times in human history. And my great-grandfather was part of the liberation of concentration camps and death camps, which is why I participated in it. And more importantly is understanding more of what happened. It's not my first time that I've been to Auschwitz and Birkenau, but it was probably the most meaningful.
Yeah. So I want to get into that because I actually, you and I were talking, I actually watched the live stream, and, seeing it on live stream is one thing. Being there has got to be a completely different thing. And I want to talk about that.
Sure.
But first, let's start. I want to hear about where you grew up. Did you grow up in Abilene or in Kansas? Where did you grow up?
So actually, I grew up in a town called Huntsville, Alabama. It's a city, pretty large. Redstone Arsenal's there. Great place. I went to boarding school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at Valley Forge Military Academy, and then I went to.
Did you have trouble getting accepted into that?
No, that was pretty easy. That one was pretty easy.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I guess we can let you come to our school.
Yeah.
But then I ended up in St. Joe, Missouri, at Missouri Western State University.
Okay.
Where I graduated there with a history degree.
No kidding.
And ended up getting my MBA at Baker. So I've spent all my adult life in the Kansas City metropolitan area, and of course my family goes back in Kansas to the mid 1800s, so 1850s.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
wow, that far back, huh?
Pioneers, really. Whenever they talk about the Dust Bowl and they talk about settling the West, my family was part of that.
Yeah. I used to live in western Kansas, so we'd drive by Abilene all the time, and Salina, and right down I-70.
Right down I-70. It's kind of funny. When my great-grandfather was president of the United States, there was a rule that for every 4,000 people community, there would be an exit ramp because they needed to get on and off. Abilene didn't have 4,000 people, but it still got an exit ramp. So I wonder why that is. I don't know, but it's kind of one of those fun little tidbits of history.
So do you get back to Abilene very often?
I'm there all the time. I sit on the board of directors of, I sit on the advisory board of the Eisenhower Foundation, which is the website that's pulled up there.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time there. My mom lives there. And of course I have relatives that live out there still to this day.
So it was college that brought you to Kansas City then, in the area?
Well, my mom actually moved here while I was in my senior year of high school.
Oh, okay.
And so I was just like, well, be close to my mom, but not close enough, because at 18 years old, you really don't want to be that close.
I've been through that 3 times now.
Absolutely. So I was close enough where I could drive back if I needed to, with an hour, but farther enough away to have my own independence.
Yeah, that's awesome. We, the Chiefs training camp is there now.
So actually, about that all started, Don Wilson was the guy that was in charge of bringing the Chiefs to St. Joseph, Missouri, because before they were out of state,
Right.
when they did their training camp
In Minnesota. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so Don Wilson actually got that done. And I was on the student council, or the college student council at the time as a senator. And we had to vote on it and all this stuff. Like, it was a big production.
The student council had to approve that.
They approved it as well.
Wow. Well, now it's a huge deal. You got Pat going up there, and the Chiefs are doing well. It's a cool thing.
You can't beat the Chiefs. I mean, and the Royals are playing pretty good too.
Yeah.
You know, what Dave Moore did building up the minor league team and the system that he put in place was amazing. And I'm sad to see him leave the Royals, actually.
Well, he's still in Kansas City.
He is. He's right down the road.
There's things happening around Dayton Moore right now. We won't say anything, but he was just here on a podcast. We do City Union Missions podcast.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one for him.
Yeah, and so he's a big supporter of them. And my boys, not to get off on a rabbit trail, but my boys are baseball kids. And so they all played, growing up, and my middle son pitched in college.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But Dayton's kid, his boy went to Kansas City Christian, where my boys went to school. And so anyway, we know him a little bit, but it's fun. We always have fun talking to Dayton about baseball.
Such a nice guy.
Yeah, he really is.
Human being.
Yeah, he's very approachable, very open to talking with you, and, has some very strong convictions about things that need to happen. And, it's awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So, ended up in Kansas City, went to college here, and you've stayed here.
I have. Kansas City is home. I can see why my great grandfather said in one of his speeches that the greatest thing that he can claim is that he's from Abilene. Kansas is a unique place. If I was to describe Kansas to people, it's kind of like this: you can still do business with a handshake, and what you say actually happens. And it's a unique thing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that is? Just Midwestern values, or is it what? Why are we like that?
I think our values speak for themselves. I mean, when you look at things that go on in the country, and you look at some of the major cities. Not that Kansas City isn't a major city; it is a very large city.
Yeah.
But when you start thinking about that, and you think about who we are as a people, we're the ones that settled this country. We're the ones that grew this country. We're the ones that farm this country. We're the ones that bring you your oil. We bring you your planes. That's what Kansas does. And we don't ask for handouts, and we work hard together. And if somebody needs to borrow a cup of sugar, then come knock on my door. It's not a big deal, right? So that's who we are as a people.
The world needs more of that right now.
100%.
Yeah.
What I always tell people is that it's just as easy to give someone a smile than to ignore them and ask them how their day is. It's that simple. And if everybody in the world did that and smiled and said, how was your day, the world would be a better place.
So I agree completely. So what did you know about your great-grandfather growing up?
Nothing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, why would you, right? So it's just stories to me.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really actually understand this stuff. So when I was growing up, I grew up.
So you had no sense of who he was or anything?
Not at all. It didn't really hit me until I was in my late teens, early 20s, when I was like, oh, I guess he was kind of important.
Wow.
Right? So,
oh my gosh.
But it's just stories, right? Yeah.
Right.
Did I know that he was president of the United States? Yes. Did I know that at the time there hadn't been 40, and then there was 40, and now there's 45? Yes, I knew that was important. But really, when you start thinking about it, and you hear about the stories, you hear about people like de Gaulle coming to the house to visit Ike, and you hear about Khrushchev coming over to the house and to visit Ike, and the arguments and fights that happened with Khrushchev and Ike at the farm in Gettysburg. You start hearing about these things, you think it's normal, right?
Yeah.
So it's no big deal. You don't think about it, but then as you're getting older and you start going to more and more things, it starts becoming a bigger deal, and you start understanding that Ike wasn't just president; he was the general and supreme allied commander of all foreign forces during World War II. Yeah. And then you start learning more and more about that, and you start reading the history, and you start asking questions, and you visit the library more, and you start actually having a good understanding and grasp of it. And it's, it becomes part of you.
Merrill, I remember when we shot your video, and we'd stop in between takes, and you would start sharing history.
Sure.
I mean, I could tell you're a student of history.
Yeah.
I mean, was that driven by just wanting to learn about your great-grandfather, or is that just something in your DNA?
Actually, my grandfather, John, was, which is Ike's son. He was actually a historian by training. He went to West Point. Actually, he was a brigadier general in the Army. A lot of people don't know that, and an ambassador to Belgium, which is really cool.
Wow.
But then he ended up writing books throughout his whole life afterwards. I'm dyslexic, so I'm a severe dyslexic.
Right? Wow.
I am. So, like, if someone's like, "Hey, you need to read this," I'd be like, "Okay, give me a couple minutes to read through it, and then I can read it again out loud or something like that." So it's one of those weird things, but it didn't stop me from wanting to learn. And so what it did is, in college, for example, it might take someone an hour and a half to do their homework. It would take me 3 hours. I just put in the work.
Yeah.
And, that's our Midwestern
Developed
values.
your work ethic then.
Exactly. and that's led me to the success in business that I've had over the years. And also it's helped me with my kids because I understand the amount of patience and of respect for my mother and father, the amount of patience that it takes to raise kids. And the more I know, right?
Yeah.
The older I get.
And did they know you were dyslexic?
Absolutely. But it was different back then. They didn't have
Yeah.
the same type of things that they have today.
Right.
Today you can go to classes and you can do all these different things. But back then it was, oh, you're dyslexic, you're not graduating high school.
Yeah.
That's why I went to Valley Forge Military Academy, where they said, you're dyslexic? Oh, okay, well, too bad. Keep doing your work.
Yeah.
And so I learned that. And nobody's going to give you a handout in life. Nobody's going to give you a free pass. Some people do have it better than others. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, you are what you put into yourself.
Yeah. Do you ever feel the need, looking back at, Ike's career, like, and you being such a historian and really diving into the details of all of that, you might be the reason a lot of that's remembered, or, you know what I mean? It's like, we're doing a documentary on the history of women's basketball right now. And a lot of the ladies that we're talking about is pre-Title IX.
Right.
They're 80 or 90 years old now. And so we've captured 120 interviews of some of the top ladies in women's basketball back before the NCAA said you could play women's basketball. So we're preserving that history, I kind of sense that with you as well. It's like, the history so well, it's in here. Have you thought about, it's like, man, I need to figure out a way to keep this going for generation after generation.
So to take on someone else's burden is very hard to do. So I don't consider it as a responsibility of mine. I consider it as a privilege. And it is a privilege to be a part of my family. It's a privilege to have the Eisenhower name attached to it, especially in Kansas. It means a lot here.
Yeah.
But most importantly is that if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
And that's the question that you have to ask. So I've been given a lot, so I give a lot. So when I go to the International, March of the Living, for example, that just happened not too long ago.
Yeah.
I gave everything I had to it. It's not because I felt like I had to. It's because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so the next generation that doesn't learn the same things in history books, and maybe they don't have an opportunity to go out to, Abilene, Kansas, to go visit the library. I'll speak to any school. I'll talk to any Rotary Club about it. Education's the key to everything because history repeats itself every 80 years. I didn't study World War II history in college. I studied actually the Crusades because that's my area of interest actually in history. But everything can go back. Again, everything goes back to Crusades.
So you see the pattern?
100%. I can tell you from about 800 to now how the pattern has worked and how it's moved.
How do we break that pattern? I guess that's the question, huh?
Education.
Yeah.
You have to stop de-educating the population. You have to make sure that they have an understanding, a basic understanding of logic and reason with the ability to work for themselves.
We're in an interesting time right now because I think that, the younger kids are being educated completely different than we were, obviously.
Of course.
And there's so many ways to connect with people. I wonder, have you thought about that? Like moving forward is how do you educate, a teenager about what happened?
Don't be afraid. History is what it is. You can't take down statues. You can't change it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And it's okay that it is what it is.
Yeah.
The second we stop, the second we take down those statues, the second we stop remembering people, the second we start changing names, the second we start washing out the history, it will repeat itself.
That's happening right now.
It is 100%. That's why the international, again, going back to the March of Living, the reason why I'm saying that is they're living the history. And by going to that and meeting with 80 Holocaust survivors and all the kids that are there gives me hope for the future, because people will learn and are learning. But we can't be afraid to talk about facts. We can't be afraid to talk about what actually happened, because how else do you learn?
There's an assault on facts right now, don't you think?
Of course.
I mean, nobody wants to know the truth.
And the truth isn't fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you take it back, Brown versus Board of Education, that's the 80th anniversary this year, right? The truth is the United,
80.
yeah, the truth, exactly. The truth is that it was a difficult decision. It was something that had to happen. And it was really the first movement, real movement in the civil rights movement, right? So we had the Civil Rights Act that was passed during the Eisenhower administration, who started the civil rights movement really on the legislative side.
Mm-hmm.
But then Brown versus Board of Education was separate isn't equal. Equals equal, right? And that's important to understand, because when you look at Little Rock, Arkansas, for example,
Mm-hmm.
when Ike sent the 101st Airborne in, it set a precedence. That's the first time since Reconstruction that the United States military went in to fix a problem. And so it's something that we have to understand as in a country. And now we're how many years later?
It's
Almost 80
this week, right?
All right. And now we're talking about it again because the laws are not being enforced by governors.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And again, I'm not making judgment. I'm just talking facts.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to kind of go over to the March for Life a little bit. Talk about Ike's. What was his role in that? Because obviously you got presented an award for him liberating.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind if I talk about Ike real fast before we get into
No,
it? Because
by all means.
I'll tie this all together.
Yeah,
real
that's
fast.
great.
I think it's important. So, when we think of presidents of the United States, we think of people that have wealth and have accumulated power, and we think about people that have extraordinary circumstances, but they typically come from privilege.
Yeah.
My great-grandfather wasn't that. My great-grandfather grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Abilene, Kansas, meaning he was dirt poor. He was so poor and discriminated against that when he went to deliver milk from the creamery to the Seeley Mansion, which was the very wealthy house in town, he wasn't allowed on the porch. He had to put it on the porch because they wouldn't let him on the porch
right?
because of who he was and his family.
Wow.
So when we talk about privilege, Ike didn't have any. When we talk about poor, Ike was that. And his mother graduated from Lecompton University, or college, I guess it was at the time, in the 1800s as a woman, which is unbelievable. But what she did was she instilled the value of education onto her kids, onto her boys. And each one of them ended up going to college. And the one that did the worst was a pharmacist.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. One of them worked their way up from being a janitor all the way to VP of Commerce Bank. And, of course, Milton Eisenhower became president of Johns Hopkins University.
Yeah.
And it goes on. So why do I say that? I say that because Ike was never supposed to be in the military. He went there because it was a free education. He wasn't able to go into Annapolis because he was too old whenever he was applying, because he would put his brother through college. And there was nobody left to put him through college. So he applied to Annapolis, was rejected because of his age, wrote letter after letter after letter, and finally got into West Point. So he wasn't supposed to be in the military. In World War I, he never saw combat. He never went overseas. He was stuck at different bases doing things like strategic, strategy, and also coaching football, believe it or not.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
When he was 8 years old, he contracted blood poisoning in his right leg and almost had it amputated. Again, not supposed to be there. And when he was at West Point, he broke that same leg, and they wanted to kick him out of the Army, but he stayed. So by the time World War I happened, he never went overseas. He never saw combat. And by World War II, in 1938, when the war started, he was a colonel.
Wow.
He was a colonel.
Like meteoric.
He was like mediocre rank in the military, but was still in.
Colonel is mediocre rank?
I mean, it's high middle.
Okay.
It's not top, right? So it's like almost right in the middle. So he planned the Doolittle raids, and then got a star, and then got another star, and then eventually became in charge of North Africa, and became the Supreme Allied Commander of all Allied forces. But there was many times in his career, and this is actually the film that's showing some of that.
Yeah.
There's many times in his career where he never should have been in the military. He should have left the military, but he stayed. For a multitude of reasons, but he stayed. He ended up doing well, becoming the Supreme Allied Commander, and eventually President of the United States. So the boy that had to wear his mother's shoes to school because they couldn't afford shoes ended up becoming President of the United States through pure hard work.
That's the American.
Right. So when the war started, or when we entered the war, we knew that there was concentration camps. We knew there was things that were going on. We just weren't in the war. So by 41, when we were doing North Africa, and by 43, when we were planning D-Day, June 6, 1944, when we landed in D-Day, it took from there to the next May for us to defeat the Nazi Reich. About halfway through France, the rumors started getting way worse, and then by the time Ike came, they liberated the first concentration camp. Ike forced his people to take photos and invited the press, Congress, everyone, because he knew it had to be on record. So his role with the March of the Living is that he was the person that said, this happened. We need to document it because one day they're going to say it never happened or it wasn't as bad as it is. And the proof is today, because what are they saying today?
Yeah. He knew that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I was asked to be on the march, it was very much an honor to be asked, first of all, and then to go on it. To me, it was surreal because I'm going to Auschwitz, where I said it before, but 1.3 million people died. And you start thinking about that and you start realizing it. And I've been to the tour before, and I was fine for a while. I can, reading the books that I've read, understanding, seeing pictures, I've seen this stuff before. So there's no shock value there. But what I wasn't prepared for was the children. And that's the part that killed me.
Yeah.
Right. I cried more than any grown man ever should cry.
Yeah.
When you see that every single time. And that was the second time I've seen it, and I knew it was coming and just bawled like a baby. But the next day we did the march, and we walked from Auschwitz to Birkenau just like all those people before. And what's interesting is exactly 80 years before, whenever the same people were going to their deaths to be exterminated and murdered, they had no hope. But whenever I was walking, you had people singing, you had people celebrating the fact that we remember, all of these horrible, horrific things that happened, the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
And, being a part of that was very, very, very important, and something that me and my wife will never forget.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So I watched some of the events. You can watch them, and probably can go to the website.
Sure.
Maybe I'll put that in the show notes or something. But you can watch the events on YouTube. They streamed them live, but it's still recorded, and seeing the singers that are. It was like a celebration, But it just, I don't know. There's something about it that was just very compelling to me in watching how people were handling that.
Every step that you take, walking back through, remembering that historical moment, is cleansing the evil that happened before.
Yeah.
And so every time you get a chance to walk through that, anybody that ever goes, and you have an opportunity to see it, just remember you being there is remembering and respecting all the people that died there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to go.
You should.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, I really would. Are there survivors? There's still survivors from that?
There are. There's not many left.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of meeting 80 of them. And, it's one of those things you don't think about. I always think of Ike as a World War II general, as as president of the United States, and I think about all the great things he did as president and understanding that he did this. But we don't really think about the fact that he was the person that liberated these concentration camps. Not him exactly, but his troops were the ones, and he was in charge of doing that. And the fact that he understood history and he wanted that history recorded was probably the most important thing in World War II. Not not just winning the war,
Yeah.
but recording the atrocities that happened. And seeing people that survived. There's one lady, for example, her name's Eva. She was born 3 days before the camp was liberated. And the night before, they ran out of gas, so she wasn't murdered.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
I mean, just hearing these stories, another guy, his name was First. He walked the death camp in Dachau, walked to his death, and ended up being liberated right before. And so you're seeing all of these different people that happened, and it's absolutely incredible. And the stories are remarkable.
And what is it like being with them at a place like that? I mean, that's
Humbling.
yeah.
Could you imagine? I mean, their whole lives they've had to live with memories of all this death and destruction.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted. In this country, we have no idea or can comprehend something like that because we haven't dealt with it.
Right. Right. War and all the things that are happening. Yeah, exactly right.
The last war that touched our soils was the War of 1812.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you want to count Pancho Villa, in the 1840s.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no idea. And Europe is constantly in war again. I mean, it's in war right now. But, it's one of those things where we have to take a serious look of what's important.
Now, Ike wasn't actually part of the, I mean, I know he was part of the liberation. He wasn't with the troops when that happened.
He went to the camps.
He did. Okay.
He was one of the people that he absolutely, once he heard word, he went to the camps and he made his officers go to those camps. And he was the only general
He wanted them to take in.
Absolutely. And he's the only general that, in upper command, Patton wouldn't go to the camps. Bradley didn't go to the camps. He did. And that's where he said, we need to bear witness on this.
What do you know about that event? I mean, do you know anything about, I don't know, I can't fathom what that might have been like, him coming up there and, being the leader of the troops and then setting the example of we need to remember this.
So my grandfather, John, was his aide de camp. So two things happened. One, in June 6, 1944, one, D-Day happened. And then two, my grandfather graduated West Point through the early commissioning program. It was sent to be aide de camp to Ike, which was interesting.
Yeah.
So he was actually the one that was taking the photos.
Oh, is that right?
And I asked him one time, and he said, there's some things we just don't talk about.
Mm.
And so it was that bad.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
I mean, that would be life-changing.
It
seeing
was.
that. I mean,
and they didn't have it the way they have it now with PTSD and all that stuff. That wasn't even a diagnosed thing.
Yeah.
Could you imagine what those troops had to go through?
Oh, man.
And not just them, the people that were there that survived. When you walk in and you have to ration out water and food to people because they're so malnutrition, they have so much malnutrition that it will kill them if they have too much or eat too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine having to say no to somebody that hasn't eaten in the way that they were.
Yeah.
They were skeletons, literally walking skeletons.
Yeah. Hard to believe they're even alive.
I can't.
Yeah.
And, what the Jewish people had to endure during World War II and throughout history, I mean, if you can go back all the way to Ramses, is really remarkable. And I'd never understood why. And that's the question that you have to ask yourself when you read history is what is the point of this? Why is it this one population, this one group? But there was 300,000 other people that died too at Auschwitz and Birkenau. Gypsies, people of color, people of clergy, people that were part of the church were killed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just Jewish people. The main thing was the extermination of the Jews. So the final solution.
And this event's going to keep going every year. It sounds
so
like,
it's been
they're
going
going to
on.
keep it going a long time.
Yeah, it's been going on for like 27 years.
Yeah.
And the lady in charge of it, her name's Phyllis Heinemann. She's a wonderful lady.
I believe I talked to her.
You
actually.
probably
Yes,
did.
yeah.
She probably did. She's about this tall.
Well,
literally.
I was on a phone call or something with her. I didn't actually get to see her, but I did talk to the guy that actually is like a producer for the event, and he lives in Israel.
Yeah.
And, I can't remember his name, but it was really interesting. He was awesome.
Good.
I really enjoyed speaking with him, and because we had to figure out some logistics and things. But the night before I spoke with them, they had the sirens going off, and I'm like, what is that like? He goes, well, it's just part of your life
Right.
when you live in Israel.
So, and I try not to get too political whenever I can, because I like to live in the world of facts, not opinions.
Yeah.
But factually, this is not an opinion. If all the people in Israel put down their arms, what would happen? You have to ask yourself that question. And if all the people in Hamas put down their arms, what would happen? So I'll leave that to your imagination. I think that me saying that alone answers your question.
Yeah.
And the truth is that you have a land that is sitting there that is that the people that live there are protecting themselves. And if everybody leaves them alone, nothing happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just factual. I mean, they don't start wars; they defend themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was interesting, and I asked him. He goes, "What do you do when the sirens are going off?" And we just go to the basement, and the chances of us getting hit by a missile are very low.
Very low.
But imagine being in the United States and that was your way of life. It's like, oh, honey, the sirens are going off. We need to go to the basement. Not a tornado. It's
We wouldn't tolerate it here.
No.
I mean, think about it in a different way. When 9/11 happened, what did we do? Right? So when 9/11 happened, we went and invaded 2 countries.
Right.
Right. And
we went on the offensive.
That's right, for 2 years. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Rules of engagement may be a little bit different, but again, the United States hasn't seen a total war since World War II. We actually technically haven't been in a war since World War II. We've been in conflicts.
Right.
Or freedom, re-government, whatever you want to call it. So if you think about it in that sense, that's proportionally, that was their 9/11, what happened October 7th.
Yeah.
And I live in the world of just information, not opinion. What would we have done?
Yeah, we would have
done exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
So say otherwise is hypocritical.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's heavy stuff.
It's unfortunate. It has
Yeah.
to be. But the truth is that nothing changes if we just ignore it.
Right.
You have to talk about the heavy things. If you're uncomfortable listening to stuff like this and talking about this stuff, then you have been spoiled in this country.
Yeah.
You need to be able to talk about it and listen to it. Because if we don't talk about it, we don't listen, we don't learn, then we're just going to repeat ourselves.
Which the 80-year rule.
80-year curse of history.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you, obviously you said when you're 16 to 20 years old, you started learning about your great-grandfather. How's that influenced you? I mean, obviously you're successful in business, your leadership, all those things. That's kind of in your DNA.
Yes and no. So not everybody that is in my family is successful, in the way that I am. Everybody's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
But you have a choice, and for me, it's a no-brainer. You try to be a good person. You try to help people, and remember to try to do the right thing no matter what it does to you. And that's tough to live with.
That is tough.
It is. But it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
So, for example, every person that I meet, especially whenever I'm in my capacity representing the family, more than likely, I'm the closest thing, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I apologize if it comes across that way. But I want you asked a direct question, how it affects me.
Right.
This is how. A lot of times, I'm the closest thing that they'll ever be to a president of the United States. And I'm not president of the United States. I have no desire to be president of the United States. My great-grandfather was president of the United States, and he was a very good president.
Yes.
And he is loved. So the way I see it is that every story that I hear about someone else's grandfather, every story that I hear about someone else's father, someone else tells me that they were at Boy Scouts and they saw him, it matters to me more than you know. And I give every single person as much time as I possibly can, every single time. Because, again, might be the closest thing to them, to a president.
Yeah.
But also every single one of their memories is important to me and my family, because it is a reflection on something that our family did and got to be a part of their lives. And so when you talk about success and you talk about business and all that, I take a lot of that stuff to what I do in business. So I try to give everybody time. I try to treat everybody with respect, and I try to be kind, because it's just as easy to be kind as it is to be a jerk.
Yeah.
It's actually easier to be kind. Once you get in the habit of it, it's super, super fun.
Yeah.
Because you make people's day.
Yeah. The motivations for business are different when you think that way, right? I mean,
It is.
it's like, obviously we're in business because we want to make a living and, all those things. But when that's your only motivation, it kind of changes the way you handle people.
And everybody's different. But for me, how it works for me is I try to just do the right thing regardless. And I'd much rather be the one that gets screwed over than to screw somebody else over.
Yeah.
You don't always win on that, right? Sometimes there's other things that happen that are out of your control, but you try to do the right thing at all times. Try.
Yeah.
You don't always succeed.
Yeah. 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 Doing the right thing hurts sometimes too, doesn't it?
Very badly. Very badly.
Especially if you're trying to make money. I've seen that in the past. It's
Even-
like,
even
well,
if-
okay, we got to do this. It's not going to be great for us, but
Yeah. So, and the paradigm shift of business is so unique. So when I talk about business, I say it's really simple. Business is very, very easy. Do you have a product that the consumer wants or not? Okay, that's the easy part of business. The hard part is the people, right? So
Right.
that's the hardest part. So yes, the consumer wants the product, but do you have the right people pushing the product? Do you have the right people doing this? Do you have the right people doing that? And so the leadership side of it is understanding the people that you're working with, understanding the people that you're dealing with, and trying to make those people better.
do you think that was why Ike was so successful? Obviously, was a very gifted leader. I mean, motivating people and, winning people. You can't be president if you can't win people.
True.
And, I see, this is not to puff you up or anything like that, but I see that in you. I see wanting to help people. Is that a key leadership thing that you get from him, you think?
So for me, my needs are a lot of times secondary to other people's needs. So I try to put people first. I mean, obviously I have to make a living and I have to make some money, but there's other things that you can do to make money and they're not quite as ethical and,
Right.
those types of things. That's not me. My thing is that if I surround myself and I can look myself in the mirror every single day saying that I've done the right thing and I do the right thing, or try very hard to do it, even if you fail sometimes, it makes it better. Ike was gifted because he was able to take small bits of information and create plans with it and adjust the egos in his room. And this is a very important business lesson. Very important. He was able to take the egos in the room and have them work together.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, no matter who you are in business. I don't care if you're Donald Trump in the White House today or Barack Obama when he was in the White House. Having to manage those egos is unbelievable because the people that are working for you are some of the brightest and smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
And so why would you think they wouldn't have an ego? Every person has an ego, and every person is ticked different. It doesn't matter who you are. And so being able to penetrate that first and second layer, of surface level stuff and understand what actually motivates them is what's important. One of the things that I thought was very unique and it taught me a lot is, have you ever seen the picture where Ike is standing in front of the 101st Airborne and he's like this talking to the guy?
I don't recall it.
Okay. Well, I can
We'll
show
bring
you.
it up now.
Yeah. So he's sitting there talking to the guy like this. And I was talking to my mother. My mother met the guy in the picture, number 23. Met the guy in the picture. I was like, what were they talking about? He goes, fly fishing.
Is
Fly
that
fishing.
right?
So it's a cast that he was doing.
Is
He
that
wasn't
right?
talking to him in a mean way or being rude or trying to motivate him. He's like, oh, you got to catch that, because Ike was a fly fisher.
Huh.
So he found in the 10 seconds that he had, he said, where are you from? Oh, great fishing up there. I fly fished up there a few times, and that's what he was doing the day D-Day was happening.
Wow.
That 101st Airborne Trooper went into behind the enemy lines shortly after that and was fighting.
Wow.
that is what leadership is. It's not about you. It's about the people that are around you. And if you can uplift those people and make them better, the best versions of themselves, then you've done your job.
Yeah.
And by doing that, guess what? You're making yourself the best version of yourself as well.
Do you think that was a God-given gift that he just had?
No,
He learned it?
I think he saw what was bad and he figured out a better way.
Yeah. Problem solving.
That's what he did. He was
Yeah.
a problem solver.
That's probably why he was a great general.
I
too.
think this biggest thing that he did was his ability to strategically think about things that you couldn't see. So prophetic almost in some instances, military industrial complex, civil rights, the highway system, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that happen under his administration when he had the ability to do it. NASA, FAA.
Yeah.
So all these things that we deal with today, all those things, those all happened under the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah. Foundational.
We just need to continue to grow on them in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit, Merrill, about your current, what do you do now?
Sure.
Is it BR Companies?
Yeah, Building Resources.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Building Resources, and we're a construction, real estate development company.
Okay.
We do energy projects as well. Actually, energy.
Huge
is
need for that, right?
But mainly we do kind of energy efficiency stuff. So the same building that you have here, we would look at it, show you where you can save money by updating modern technology, et cetera, et cetera. Not saying that you aren't. I'm just saying.
This is 1972.
There you go.
it's
So
when this
there's
is built.
things that you can improve.
Yeah.
But some of our development stuff that we have going on, we're building a high-rise in downtown Kansas City right now. We have stuff going on in Arizona where we're building a medical facility, new hospital wings, et cetera, et cetera. So we have it's a small but large company at the same time.
And what is your role?
So I connect the dots. So I put things together. I help bring people together. I help on the overall strategy of the company, global strategy, if you will. And that's kind of what I do.
So that leads me to another question. When you talk about strategy, I mean, everything about the way we do things is changing right now.
It is.
And I think of it in our little bitty small world, even the way that I would sell.
Right.
Completely different than the way I did it 10 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah. So how's that impacted like your business and how you're doing things differently?
So let's think about it a different way. Let's stop. In our business, we bid. We don't sell necessarily, right? Or we do sell. The
So
city
bid
and stuff
comes
like that.
out and
So we bid it. So think about it in this way. With the current model that's going on and the amount of information that comes out. So I always say that the amount of knowledge in the world doubles every day. Like content doubles every day.
No
Every
doubt.
single day, it doubles. So what right now, if there was 1, tomorrow's 2, the next day's 4, the next day's 8, etc. What AI does is AI-driven solutions allow for you to go through all of that and allows for them to sweep through and comb that information and allows you to build a better business. And so I'm not saying that you have to do everything with AI because there are things that AI cannot do, like understand people,
yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
That may change.
Well, yeah.
That
exactly.
may change. But as of right now, as a historian and as a strict data point situation, I can type in a problem that I have, say these are what I think the solutions are, refine these, change them, add to it, tell me based on empirical data what is correct, what is not correct. And then it spits out information. And then you have to read that information and interpret it. So when you're talking about this in another way, I read an article maybe 6 months ago that says lawyers will no longer be needed.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? Well, because everything that's in the law book is already in AI. So you say, I'm being charged with this. It says, here's your defense. Now, do I think you're going to need lawyers? Yeah. Again, human factor.
Yeah.
You need to have that. Doctor walks in, has medical AI on his tablet. He puts in the symptoms. She puts in the symptoms and says all these things. Well, I've already checked that. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Oh, this weird disease that I've never heard of. Let me read about. Oh, that's it. So
Yeah.
it's going to save lives. It's going to change the way we do business. It's going to change the way bids are done.
Yes.
It's going to be changing the way that sales are done.
That's already happening, by the way.
Absolutely. Well, I was helping out a nonprofit the other day. Had a meeting with them, and they were like, "Well, do you know?" I was like, "Why aren't you guys looking at the community foundations all throughout the country, or all throughout the state?" And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Every community foundation has millions of dollars for the most part.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but a lot of them do." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll start looking that up." I was like, "Well, hold on." And then it lists all of it out, how much money they have. And I said, "What's the main contact for each one of these?" And it added all the main contacts. Saved a month worth of work.
Yeah.
It took 15 seconds.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's what we're talking about.
You know what's interesting to me about just on the Chat GPT side and all that stuff, it's like it's all about the prompt that you put in.
Right.
You know, if you know how to be really, really descriptive and creative and, you know, put the right prompts in there, you can get really good results.
Absolutely.
But if you don't, you're going to get stuff that's
it's just like
not so good.
sales.
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
your CRM. So when you start talking about those types of things too, I mean, nothing will beat a face-to-face person right now. But you can have that face-to-face person more prepared today than ever to go on a sales call.
Yeah.
To have a sales conversation, to have a meeting, because of the technology that's available today. And it's just going to improve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what happens.
Some people are pretty scared about AI. You know, it's like,
Why?
you know, like whistleblower type people. Not whistleblower, it's not the right word, but I actually saw a guy on television today very, very concerned that AI is like, is the guy from Meta is building a super AI thing now. Have you heard about that? And,
Sure.
And so it's going to be smarter than humans, is what they're saying.
They already are.
Yeah.
I mean, as much knowledge as I think I have nothing compared to the internet.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
So we're saying that it's going to be smarter than humans. All we're doing is we're taking a complicated search engine and generating results.
Right.
That's all we're doing. We're not having long, in-depth conversations with AI. So that's what we're talking about.
The media kind of wants to take that and turn it into the Terminator. You know, this guy, you know, they're taking over the world.
I'm pretty sure we're past 1997, so we're probably okay.
Yeah.
So, but do I think that could happen? Sure, anything can happen. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. My question is, how do you let it happen? And are there restrictions and stuff in there to make sure it doesn't?
Got to have some guardrails, I would think. You know, I was thinking too, in the construction business, man, you should maybe be thinking about building server facilities. You know, because that's what I'm hearing about AI is it takes so much computing power that, you know, the Facebook guys are like building their own facilities.
The problem is that there's another part of it that nobody's talking about, and that's the power grid.
Right.
So the power grid itself is dated over 100 years.
Yeah.
And if it would take us a couple $1 trillion to fix the power grid the way that it needs to be fixed in order for it to run. Did you know that the most effective way to generate power is nuclear? And we haven't built a nuclear power plant in this country since 1974.
Why do you suppose that is?
Regulations. They're afraid of hazardous material.
Yeah.
Chernobyl happened, so things stopped. But we can put nuclear power plants on an aircraft carrier and a submarine, but we can't put one down the road.
Right.
It's also the cleanest version
right.
of energy right now too. So when we talk about the power that's needed, we talk about the grids, there's going to have to be a relaxing of regulations at the federal level or an adjustment in order to put into consideration these things.
Technology's had to have come far enough that it can be a lot safer.
Absolutely.
I mean,
well, see, the thing goes with AI, you still have to adjust your prompts, just like you said.
Right.
So you have to make sure, that's not quite what I was looking for. Let me redefine that. Redefining, blah, 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 right? Redefining, this is what I meant.
Yeah.
You still have to be smart enough to figure that out. And so as technology has moved on, you still have to figure those things out.
You know, it's interesting. I get asked this all the time about our business, film production and, what are you guys using AI? And we use it all the time for different types of things. But one of the things that's really cool, we're doing this basketball documentary. Well, it's all 1972 back to the 1800s, late 1800s. So the pictures that we have are very, very low res, Well, we use an AI program now to
Absolutely.
up-res all those pictures, and it's incredible.
Absolutely.
And we've seen it. So we've been working on it for 4 years, and we've seen the capability of the AI to actually, we watched it get better. And every month it gets better and better and better at it. So sometimes we'll go back and redo the same picture and get a completely different, better result now.
That's right. That's right. And 10 months from now and 10 years from now, it's going to be even more crazy how it's going to be. And I'm excited about that. I think that the world needs that. I think that I'm hoping that at some point in time we just come together and realize that we're humanity, and we start working together in a productive way to get us ready for space exploration. That's what I would love to see it.
Yeah.
You know, it would be an incredible thing to do. And, you know, my great-grandfather started NASA. That's the next logical step, is to go colonize, you know, other planets.
You know, I love what Elon Musk is doing with the space exploration. You know, I don't know what it is about that guy. He's got this ability to you know, drive organizations to do things like that. But seeing a rocket land itself is just unbelievable to me.
It's incredible. And what he's done in the private sector is absolutely remarkable. When NASA was formed in 1958, the idea of it was to actually take rocketry out of the hands of people. Because the average person shouldn't be, you know, they make movies about the astronaut farmer and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
So the average person should not be building rocket ships and trying to fly into space. Elon's not average.
No.
He's not average at all. He's an exceptional human being. I'm glad he's on our side.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's really cool seeing what's happening with the, you know, SpaceX and all of those things. I think that he's vilified a lot right now, but man, someday people are going to realize how much he helped.
He is going to be in the history books, like people like von Braun, Einstein, for his ability to think through these things. The thing that I like most about him is that he was willing to, regardless of what the outcome is, he was willing to stop and go and help and try to help the government. And that's a very, very, very terrible position to put yourself in. That was selfless of him. And I have a lot of respect for him.
He had to know that too, don't you think?
Absolutely. He's smart enough to know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
He's going to turn into the villain.
Yeah. And boy, they have really tried to make him into the villain.
But people have short memories. They're goldfish.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, absolutely.
Gosh, I think we could go for a couple more hours.
I'm happy. I got nothing else to
Let's
do.
do it again.
I'm just
no, this is really cool to me. Just learning, you know, the history and, you know, talking about the Auschwitz and everything that happened over there. To me, this is the kind of thing that I think that us as a company and, you know, Real Media, we can help get some of those messages out there.
Absolutely agreed, and I appreciate what you guys do. But let me leave you on this one thought. When in leadership, as people, you have a choice every day, and when you talk to people and you deal with people, I think it's important to realize that you don't know what those people are dealing with and what they've dealt with. So, for example, their kid could have been expelled from school, or they could be losing their car, or they've had the greatest day of their life. You have no idea. You can't control how their day is going, but what you can do is control your day and stay positive and make sure you're trying to say hi and be polite to people. If everybody that listens to this tries that and does that,
we've accomplished something.
One thing, but it makes the world a better place too. So every day I try to wake up and try to help people, try to do a good thing for somebody. A lot of times it's just my kids, because that's as far as I can get sometimes. But you know, you try to do the right thing. But I think that's important to understand, because if we make that a habit, the world becomes a better place very quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. If somebody was going to support the event March of the Living, is there any place you could tell them to go?
Yeah, just the website, marchoftheliving.org, is available. And then, of course, the Eisenhower Foundation.
Yes.
That is, so it's kind of interesting. Do I got just another minute here?
Yeah, heck yeah.
The Eisenhower Foundation is kind of interesting because it was never designed to be a presidential foundation. So there was no such thing as a presidential act, right? The Library Act. NARA wasn't a thing for presidential libraries, and it was the first.
Now
one.
it's a given.
Right, automatically.
Yeah.
So it became the first one, but before that, the Eisenhower Foundation was in charge of the World War II Museum in Abilene, Kansas, that turned into the presidential library that ended up building up the National Archives, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And so that's not like a traditional foundation. Like the George W. Bush Foundations has hundreds of millions of dollars in their coffers. Nixon Foundation has $35-40 million in their foundation. The Eisenhower Foundation doesn't have that because it was never required in order to start it, and now it is. So just something to keep in mind as
so people could support it though, right?
Absolutely. You can in Kansas, if people are listening from Kansas, you can actually buy a tag that says "I like Ike," his old campaign logo, and it's automatic $50 a year for registration extra. That logo right there.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome.
So there's just something simple, doesn't cost you a lot, and it's very supportive.
Can you talk about what the Eisenhower Foundation does? Like what are some of the things they do?
So the number one thing they do is they preserve the library itself. So the National Archives takes care of the National Archives stuff, but any museum changes, any type of project, long-term projects that happen, they have to pay for it. So they have to raise money, pay for it, et cetera. They also do, for thousands of kids, tens of thousands of kids a year, they do Ike education, where they do things like reenact D-Day evasion.
Is that right?
With kids in grade school. So
Wow.
they actually learn about what happened, and they do all sorts of things with that. Right now they're on a capital campaign to put in an educational system right off the library grounds. That's part of what they're doing right now. So obviously, please feel free.
Yeah.
If not, no big deal. It is what it is. But I have to always put a plug in for them whenever I can.
No doubt. Yeah, that's really cool.
Absolutely.
Do kids come from all over the state or
all over the state, all over the country?
Yeah.
Yep.
Make a trip to Abilene, huh?
Abilene, Kansas. Actually, the number one tourist spot in the country, in the state, is Abilene, Kansas.
Is that right?
Yep.
I did not know
of all
that.
things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. I just a little quick side note.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was doing work for a demolition derby
Nice.
project, and there's a guy in Abilene. I don't know if you know who he is, but can't remember his name. But he's like he's won the most demolition derbies in history.
I think that's awesome. That's
He's
really
in
cool.
Abilene.
That's really cool. Well, we're known for two things now.
Yeah.
That's
And it's
great.
right by the railroad tracks, by the way.
Yep, wrong side. Be careful. Be
So-
careful. That's-
So pretty cool. Well, I thank you for joining me. This is awesome. We should do it again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
I'll have to dig in deep and get some more questions for you.
Yeah, and if you want to talk politics and current events, I'm happy to do that too anytime.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. This is In a World with Real Media. Usually I have everybody, I don't know if you do a movie voice, but usually I have everybody do the movie voice
I
at
do
the
not
end.
have a movie voice. I'm sorry.
You might have a new career as a voiceover guy
I
after
don't
that.
think so. I'm dyslexic, remember?
Yeah. But thanks for joining us in a World with Real Media. Subscribe, share this content, get it out there. This is great stuff, and really appreciate everybody watching, and we'll see you next time.
This has been In a World with Real Media. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to subscribe on iTunes and follow Real Media on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn so you never miss an episode.